Welcome back to the weekly installment of the Reserve List Top 10. These are the hottest selling cards on the Reserve List, October 11th to the 18th of 2025. Now, is there a chance for a Reserve List comeback, a buyout? Are we talking about the same thing right now? Welcome back, everyone. I'm MTG Moxman, your host for the Reserve List Top 10, the hottest selling cards on the Reserve List. Now, let's not forget, though, all these amazing Reserve List cards we're about to see, they're for sale. You can look at them on places like TCG Player, but if you're going to buy them at TCG Player, come on, support the channel. Use my TCG Player affiliate link. It is found in the description of all of my videos. Let's start out at number 10. Number 10 is Elephant Graveyard from Arabian Nights. Now, we have been discussing how there have been unusual movements in the reserve list. This continues in this week's video. I'm not sure about the market manipulation level of this market or who's buying as many copies as I'm seeing move, but at the same time, we've got to talk about this. Now, the Elephant Graveyard. It has been as low as around $120, $130 for heavily played copies. We're all the way up to an average of $299.70 for this card. And there are a lot of wish lists with this card on it with people looking to buy. It does say tap to add one colorless mana to your mana pool, but you can also regenerate an elephant or a mammoth, or a changeling, or a shapeshifter. Don't forget why people might be looking at this for Commander. And I'll tell you right now, it looks like a lot of players in Commander have been buying a lot of the cards you're going to see in today's list. Now let's go ahead though. We're going on and we're taking a look at another card that should not be here. It shouldn't have been here last week, but the Island of Wak-Wak is back on the list with 30 sales this week, which is actually more than it had last week. That's $5,700 of total sales action for the 30 copies that we saw move in the market. Now, I want you guys to ignore the prices you're seeing. Forget the market price, forget the average price, forget the low. Just kind of go with about $190 to $200 per copy, okay? Because the market's really funky right now because of what copies are selling and the grades of these copies. When we look at the Island of Wak-Wak, this is an old Arabian Nights card. It doesn't even tap for mana. All this thing does is reduce a target flyer to 0 power. Now, of course, there are ways to make mana appear in this thing if you're using different cards, but this thing does have a significant use in Commander. It can be a very political card, but that still doesn't explain just why so many copies of Arabian Nights cards are moving right now. Guardian Beast, not on the list, but it had 15 sales. Something to keep in mind. Now, let's go ahead. Let's keep going down this list because now we're going to Revised. We're going to Underground Sea. It is approaching. Not there yet, but it is approaching an all-time high. 33 sales or $31,870 if they were all near mint. Now in this case, most of the copies leaving the market are moderately played and lightly played. We're not going to see damaged or heavily played, and we're not seeing near mint and graded stuff, but there's still enough copies moving that this thing's approaching the $1,000 mark again, the all-time high being around the $1,500 mark. This is getting significant when we're seeing these kinds of cards moving at volume. This isn't just because people might be negative on Spider-Man. This is people just moving into a market space of buying expensive cards. A lot of crypto movement, a lot of shaky stuff in the real world market has people looking for other avenues to put their cash into. And of course, since reserve list cards of high value kind of stay stale, they don't lose value. They may not gain a lot, but they're not losing a lot either. This is an amazing card, and it looks like a lot of people are after it. Now, our next card, again, we're still staying in Revised. Now we're looking at Taiga. This thing is averaging $399.99 per copy. It had 41 sales this week, or $16,400 of total sales action. The difference between this and Underground Sea is the copies moving in this market were lightly played and near mint. Almost no moderate, no damage, no heavily played. People are buying better quality copies of this card to add to their collections. It's amazing, not to mention the playability factor and things like, Legacy, Vintage, Commander, you name it. Players are looking for the real deal right now, and there's a lot of movement in many of these cards. I will note that there were several other of the dual lands that almost made the list in the 15 to 18 sale range, a little bit short of what they need to make the list this week, but that's because of those Arabian Nights cards just jumping in there. Crazy sales, crazy volumes, and by the way, Dan continues to sell multiple copies from Arabian Nights. Keep that stuff in mind. The Dan deck. Alright guys, let's go on and take a look at the Dark. This is Goblin Wizard. Now, this thing is actually at a really good price right now. 47 sales is only $3,700 of sales action. The copies moving in this market are heavily played and moderately played copies because you're getting them for like $50. You can see the average is like 80 something, the low is 51, but really the copies moving in the market are around the $50 range, which is kind of crazy to see it that cheap of a card. Again, you got to remember what Goblin Wizard can do for you, how it's going to be interacted with, and how the playability factor of a card like this might change over the years. Goblin Wizard does cost 4. That's a lot of mana to invest in a little tiny 1/1, but it says take a goblin from your hand and put it directly into play. That also means changelings and shapeshifters. Do you see a theme following today's video? It is crazy to see these sales go, but also a target goblin can gain protection from white until end of turn. That stops a lot of crazy stuff from targeting you. I like this, man. This has got some crazy stuff going this week. Now, our next card. We're jumping over and taking a look at Lake of the Dead from Alliances. This has been off and on in my videos for the last 5 years. This card comes in with 50 sales this week. That's $4,649.50 of total sales action. When we're looking at Lake of the Dead, this usually gets found in things like Tron Eldrazi, okay? This thing pumps out mega mana. There are ways of untapping it, making it just brutal for your opponents to have to deal with. The average price though is still under $100, the all-time high being around $300. Where can a card like this go? Yes, it can go above $500. This probably will over the decades that go by because nothing Wizards puts out there nowadays can mimic this kind of power level. It's just considered too broken. But in Commander, this thing is going to see a lot of play. Now, Lake of the Dead, guys, the artwork is just so iconic that every time you see it, it just puts a smile on your face if you grew up in the 90s. This was it. This was the one you're like, this is so creepy to think that this thing exists. Amazing cards. Don't forget Alliances stuff. It's amazing. Now, let's go over and take a look at Revised again because we're looking at Copy Artifact. I'm not really surprised this card is here. It's had a real uptick in the last several days. It takes the number 4 position this week with 52 sales, and that's a total sales action of $3,533.40 of total sales action. When we're looking at Copy Artifact, let's not forget that this thing's been as high as $150. It was a hard card to buy out. It's actually been over like $250 at one point for graded copies back in 2021, but the all-time high somewhere between 2024 and 2025 is around the $150 mark, and for good reason. This thing is one blue, one other. Yes, it comes in as an enchantment, but it mimics an artifact in play. Now, the copy remains even if the original is destroyed, so this is one of those cheap versions to get out there. And the fact this used to be like $15 is what really got it set off, but these copies in good condition are getting harder to find. And players are adding positions of these cards in play sets of 4, so we are seeing a drain of market and supply. This card's going to go up. Now for our next card, let's go over and take a look at Fork. Fork comes in from Revised. This has been on the list a few times this year. It takes the number 3 position. It's around $33. It sold 60 copies. Now this one comes in with less than $2,000 of sales action. But again, just like most Revised cards, there's attempted buyouts and market manipulation, sorry, pardon my word salad there, over the years. This has been one of those cards people really focused on. It does have a high playability factor. It is found in hundreds and thousands of decks all around the world. This thing comes in with play sets of 4. You want to have at least 4 of them. Some people like to have 5, right? But when we look at this card, Wizards has duplicated different versions in different colors, making this card highly effective in Commander when you add those other variations of this card with a little bit less power. Now it says, for 2 red, any one sorcery instant spell is cast is duplicated. Treat Fork as an exact copy of that target spell, although it remains red. Guys, an insane card. Twin cast, all these other ones that go with it. You've seen those Commander decks. You can see how powerful they would become. And I can see why this card continues to sell, but with such a high market supply, the price is not changing. Very nice. Now our next card, it's on the downtrend, but it's getting a lot of sales. We've got Braingeyser from Revised, $15.14 a copy. It had 68 sales this week. It takes the number 2 position. That's just over $1,000. But again, just like Fork, there are so many copies out there and in different languages that this thing is not in any situation where it's going to disappear from the market. Although the demand has been high on this card this week, there are like millions of copies out there probably between all the different versions. So don't expect this thing to shoot up in price anytime soon. it would take a lot more than 68 sales. Maybe 1,000 sales would cause it spiking if you can find that many on the market. Now, Braingeyser, though, is a very highly effective card. You can see it costs 2 blue plus X. Target player must draw X cards. This can be used offensive and defensively. Cards like this are just old school fun. The artwork just harken back to a different day when you look at that art and say, yeah, I remember that card. And many of us still use it in our decks now. So way to go. Good to see this card here. An amazing piece of iconic Magic history. But let's go to our new #1 card. You might not be expecting this one. We're going to Stronghold and we're taking a look at Mox Diamond. The average price is $788. It locks in the #1 spot with 71 sales. That's $55,948 of sales action. Now here's where things get interesting. The copies leaving the market are specifically going to Commander players. I heard it time and time again. Commander is picking up copies of this card right now. They are trading in Modern things. They are grabbing copies of this because they never want to get rid of it after they own at least one. That means this particular version, yes, but also the From the Vault foily version saw like 14 sales. That's a massive amount of cards leaving the market for Mox Diamond. This thing has had a supply chain issue for a very long time, and every time we see multiples bought by a single party, we see the price increasing. This thing's going to hit over that $1,000 mark. We talked about it happening. It looks like it's going to happen a lot sooner than I expected. Now let's talk about this market this week. It is going to be a great conversation. For a second week in a row, reserve list sales have been significantly higher than we've seen in the past. A lot of money seems to be flowing in to higher end reserve list cards. Now, this does not include power. I looked around to see how many sales were happening for Moxes and Black Lotuses. They're negligible, like next to nothing, okay? But when we're looking at dual lands, looking at the mid-range cards, even Grim Monolith, there's a lot of sales happening right now for those mid-range cards, and a lot of money seems to be flowing into individual reserve list cards of that type, of that anywhere from less than $1,500 and above the $50 mark seems to be that kind of point where a lot of sales are happening. Now, also, of note, Argivian Archaeologist, Metal Worker. We saw a lot of these individual sales, but moreover, I'm seeing a lot of wish lists start to appear from individual retailers with people looking for these cards, willing to buy them, and they're waiting for the trade-ins to come from different market space. At the same time, we've also had a couple of large collections from older players liquidating and actually getting out of that portion of the game. So there are even the old school players like myself who have folded up tent and said, you know what, I'm just not going to play anymore. I'm whatever age, I'm done. They walk into a store and they just cash it all in. That means a lot of sales happen that way because a lot of players see all these flood of incoming cards and they pick it up that same day. Thank you to the retailers out there. You guys know who you are. I appreciate those emails. It was very important to know that those sales had happened, especially for the play sets of 4. Now, when we're talking about things like Mox Diamond, guys, that card's going to keep going up. It's just so highly playable in so many different ways, and players are recognizing it more and more. And with the higher value level attached and attributed to newer sets with the prices the way they are, a lot of players are saying, why would I go for X when I can just get the Mox Diamond done, get it out of the way, suffer for an extra 2 months, skip another set of Magic sets, and just go ahead and buy an older card that I don't have to worry about owning after this because it can never get reprinted anyway. An amazing thing to see happen. Now, I don't know if week 3 and week 4, if we're going to continue to see this level of action, but we talked about last week just how many card movements we saw in older stock and how it was very unusual. The Island of Wak-Wak should not be on my list. The Elephant Graveyard could have been on, but it shouldn't be at this number and it wouldn't have been this high. Now, the people who are looking for these individual cards are not collectors. They are not people trying to buy one near mint copy to add for a collection of Arabian Nights. People looking and say, I'd like to have 10 copies. Guys, that is some crazy numbers for old school cards that only have 20,000 copies in existence. Also, Library of Alexandria had a surprising number of sales. 7 sales may not seem like a lot, but 7 for a card that can be played in Commander and somebody tried to buy them all at once across several retails. That's kind of insane to think about. And again, not every store is going to bargain with you, so they tried to undercut some of the sales saying it was banned. They argued to the store saying you should lower the price for me. That didn't really work, but in a couple other cases it did. So a significant number of copies have left, and I don't know if they're the same person. I do not know that, okay? I don't have that information. Stores can't give out personal stuff like that. I just get to know the sales volumes by looking at receipts. Very interesting stuff, guys. Crazy market out there, and I wonder if it's going to continue. I think we have a lot of value moving in the actual stock market. We got Bitcoin, all that stuff, where people are cashing out bits and moving into these types of products again to kind of diversify out. I just didn't realize it was going to be such a large volume of cards in such a short period of time. Guys, let me know what you think. Drop some comments in the comment section, and don't forget, I'll be at my live stream, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. I will see you guys there tonight. If you're watching this video on a Sunday, I'll be there at 6:30. Hope you can stop by, tune in, we'll all hang out together, and we'll talk about this stuff. Insane. Thanks again for hanging out. Thanks for being here on the channel. Looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Shop smart, shop as smart. Have a great day, everyone. All right, guys, a big shout out. Thank you to all of those patrons out there supporting this channel each and every day. Without patrons, daily uploaded content cannot happen because, you know, Mrs. Mox would tell me to get a job somewhere else. Guys, thanks again for supporting my channel. If you're a YouTube membership member or a patron, you make it happen here each and every day. All right. Welcome back to the ramble and the jamble. I lied to you. I'm sorry I lied, but I lied. I lied. Now, I didn't know I lied. It's an after... You wonder what I lied about, obviously. I understand, but I'm going to drag this out a bit. Collector edition cards sold. I was emailed later on. These cards happened overseas. They're not happening in Canada. But 4 complete sets from one party. One person bought 4 complete sets of collector edition. 4. Not just Power 9. 4 complete sets. No, they were not sealed. Haha. But they were complete. And not in near mint shape. But they wanted 4. Why would you need 4? Because you want 4 of each of the main cards. That's 4 Black Lotuses, collector edition. Not international, by the way. Collector. I didn't know I lied. I got that email way late because of the time zone difference. So I apologize for that. Also, I found out after the fact with the follow-up email. And Rick, you've got to be faster, man. I know you're probably watching this ramble jamble. You got to be faster. I appreciate everything you do. Thank you for taking the time to answer, Rick. I'm not ungrateful, but I missed that window. So the person came back to the store. Oh, am I allowed to use Rick's name? He didn't say I couldn't. There's no last name, so it's fine. And they negotiated for 2 more of the Library of Alexandria's. 2 more, heavily played. Cash and trade. Some sealed boxes. Final Fantasy may have been involved. Very interesting. So I appreciate that, Rick. Thank you for getting back to me. And I think that's it. Guys, some crazy reserve list sales. Like this ramble jamble in my head goes, I want to know so much more, and there's just not that information out there. I still don't know why these cards are moving, and I can't pinpoint exactly who's buying. Usually I kind of have a picture. No, it was not the gentleman. They've actually been really calm right now, and they haven't really been emailing. So if you're watching this, you should be emailing me too. Crazy stuff. Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time. Let's mull this all over for a week and see what happens next week. Things could die down by next week. Who knows? Ramble! Jamble!